Guys, I'm feeling pretty let down. There are so many things I want to call this movie. Civil bore, civil snore, civil chore, civil I don't care anymore. But I can't use any of these puns because the movie's turned out to be really rather good. I hope you're fucking happy with yourself, Russo brothers. In case you've missed the last 8 years of cinema, the comic book movie adaptation has really blown up as its own genre. Civil War is the latest effort from industry giant Marvel and is probably going to be their biggest film till the next major crossover in a fair few years' time. I had some significant doubts going into this movie, for reasons I'll explain why in the spoiler section of this review. Keeping it spoiler free for now though, I recommend it. When it's good, it's damned good. And although it never reaches the height of the comics it's based on and runs way too long, it's still one of the better Marvel movies overall. I'd even go so far as to say, if you trim some of the fat off the film and make it a more succinct package, it could be something incredible. But as it stands, it sure as hell ain't half bad. If you like the MCU movies, then you'll love this. If you haven't watched them before, then this is a little convoluted to jump on point, but I still think you'll manage to get a lot of fun out of it. Now, for those of you that have seen it or aren't as bothered about spoilers, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth on what did and didn't work with reference to some key scenes, but in doing so, I'm going to be approaching some spoilers for not just the movie, but also the Civil War comic. So if you want to avoid that, then please feel free to knock off the video before this countdown finishes in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I was pretty hesitant walking into this movie, and that was mostly due to the source material. You see, Civil War the comic is an absolute behemoth. For one, it's the culmination of decades of stories and features hundreds of established characters, which this movie just simply was never going to be able to do. I'm kind of glad they don't try to just throw in a sea of people, since even just bringing in 2 new major characters in Spider-Man and Black Panther feels rushed amongst the rest of an already packed narrative. But there's no denying the movie's 12 heroes fighting doesn't quite match the spectacle of the hundreds of the comic. I'm not the first one to point this out, but this looks like a war. This looks like the local youth found some sets of armour on and decided to have a scrap in your back garden. Comparatively, the sense of scale is so many leagues ahead in the comic that the book feels like superhero WrestleMania, and the movie's more like, well, this.
Alex! What are you doing out here?
The thing is, with the comparatively small cast, the movie has still managed to do a good job in creating a believably dangerous conflict with high narrative stake, but the lack of characters wasn't really the element of this adaptation I was worried about. My issues were more to do with the subject matter of the source material's plot. For those of you that don't know, the Civil War comic book's main arc is almost definitely an allegory for 9/11 and the unfair treatment of the Muslim population in Western culture in a post-September attacks environment. Whoa, get your glasses. Getting a bit highbrow there, aren't you? Oh, aye lads, I'm not fucking about. Let me explain. So the Civil War arc takes place during a time period where the Marvel Universe is so saturated with superheroes that they basically have celebrity tier lists of the twats. Your A-list would be guys like the Avengers, B-list would be people like Daredevil, etc, etc. Now the comic starts off not with anyone like Cap or Iron Man, but with this handful of inconsequential D-list superheroes. These guys have this reality show. Pure trash TV that doesn't make any real difference to society, but pretends to provide a real service. Think Dog the Bounty Hunter with superpowers. Now mostly, this cast of superhero wannabes tend to take on petty crimes, but when ratings are slipping and they happen to chance upon the supervillain Nitro going about his criminal ways, they spot an opportunity for a quick shot of fame and fortune, and decide to take him on for the cameras, despite being vastly outclassed. So they all pop out like, ha, ho, we're here to stop you, evildoer, and Nitro's just like, you folks better fucking pack this shit in, else I'm gonna cut a motherfucker. Anyway, long story short, they pin Nitro down in the centre of Stamford, seemingly forgetting the dude can explode. Clues in the name, lads. And Nitro goes nuclear, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians in a 9/11 style tragedy. After this event, the heroes you know and love find themselves being all generalised and demonised as terrorists, despite having nothing to do with the incident. Iron Man attends the public funeral of a boy who died in the attacks to show his support, only to be spat at by his mother. Human Torch flies down to a nightclub to meet a friend, only to be hassled by locals who tell him his kind isn't welcome here, before glassing him and beating him into a coma. The government then proposes the Registration Act, the main source of conflict in the story. The act suggests that all superheroes be publicly identified in a database, if you will. Sort of like what a certain presidential candidate is doing now. Make of that what you wish. Iron Man is pro-registration, Cap is against, and friends become enemies as the Marvel Universe finds themselves divided. The conflict between freedom and security present in the comic narrative was so in tune with reality and still very much relevant today. The concern with the movie for me came with the trailers, which seemed to put the Registration Act as a background conflict, while the main fight seemed to be between Cap and Iron Man over Captain America's friend Bucky, like he was the prettiest princess at prom. I had always assumed that they'd shy away from the more political commentary of the book because this movie was going to be seen by a lot more people, but I think it's worth mentioning because for me, this is the one aspect of the film where they truly dropped the ball. I'm fine with changes and adaptations, whether it's a change to plot, to characters, to setting, whatever. It's a new interpretation. You can do with it what you like. However, I do believe if you're going to change things, it should be to do something interesting, and should be either as good as or attempt to improve on the source material. A war between superheroes for civil rights? That's an awesome premise. A scrap between superheroes over the mate from Bionic Commando? It's okay. Sadly, the latter idea is the one they choose to make the focus of the movie. This is especially gutting since they actually tease some of the 9/11 Allegory stuff when the character Scarlet Witch accidentally blows up a building while out on a mission. It's no coincidence, I would assume, that we immediately cut from this to Tony Stark's mother singing a melancholy song specifically about the month of September, after all. This, along with several other instances, act as the catalyst to the movie introducing its own superhero act. We even get a mirror image of the scene from the comic where Tony Stark is harassed by a dead boy's mother. There's something to be said as well that in the film's version of these events, Tony is actually directly responsible for the death of this child. It makes his case in favour of the Registration Act feel a lot more sympathetic and personally motivated, and less an authoritarian pursuit. The problem is, they just dropped this. All of the political commentary and conflict over the Registration Act very quickly takes a backseat to a far more acceptable and simple driving force in the character of Bucky. It sort of minimises the stake in this transition, stopping the fight from being about dueling ideologies to being all centred on one person. I mean, fella's handsome like. I'd probably give his hair a little tussle as he whispers sweet nothings to us and cradles my body in the protective grasp of his mighty metal arm and chiselled abs. But you know, I wouldn't go into war for him on out. Fundamentally, this I would say is the only real hurdle this movie falls at. There's other hiccups here and there. I mean, it is the dreaded time of 2.5 fucking hours. Ugh. This irks me so much. I don't know why every film these days feels like it needs to be The Godfather, but sometimes movies really suffer from this extended time frame when cuts could actually make the whole thing a better package overall. This one is no exception. When it's good, as I've said, it's damn good and a hell of a lot of fun. But there's so much unnecessary fat you could trim out of this. Just for example, there's a scene where we see a maid find a man's body. The man turns out to be the doctor who the villain is currently assuming the identity of in an attempt to get closer to Bucky. Then, in another scene, a short while later, Tony is informed that, hey, guess what? That villain guy killed a dude and a maid found his body. Did we really need both these scenes? Wouldn't it have made the exact same amount of sense to just have this explained to Tony, since the body discovery doesn't make sense on its own anyway? I realise this is only one brief moment, but it's just a random example out of many where the film just puts in extra bits for no other reason than why not. While we're on the subject of the villain, by the way, he's about as interesting as a conversation on existential philosophy with a potato. The promise of learning something compelling is there, but in the end you realise you're talking to a main ingredient used to make chips. Throughout the movie, the guy's a mystery. He's evil, obviously, but he wants Hydra to burn? Who is he with, then? What's the end goal with the Avengers? What's the crack, man? Then with the reveal that he just doesn't like them because his family died, it's just like, okay. I mean, sure, the motivation makes sense, but it's a bit tropey. Especially when you consider that the issue of civilian collateral damage was already covered better at the start of the movie with the Registration Act stuff. He just builds to a punchline of nothing, really. Thankfully, there's enough far more engaging conflict between Cap and Iron Man that he doesn't intrude on, that he doesn't take away from the movie. Honestly speaking, with a rewrite, you could probably scrap him and the 6 other Winter Soldier shite entirely, and the film will be better off without a lot of it. Especially when you consider the villain in the end posed no real threat to anyone. I think I'd have been far more forgiving of his role if his actions had actually caused anyone to die, because a major death in a recurring character is something these movies are absolutely craving right now. If everyone keeps making it to the credits for much longer, then they're really going to lose some of the dramatic pull, since there's no tension when everyone is seemingly immortal. War Machine basically even had a death scene in this movie, but they didn't have the guts in the end to actually commit to killing him, which felt like a real letdown to me, especially since I wanted to see the even bigger revelation of either Cap or Iron Man kicking the bucket. I realise at this point I'm probably coming across as cynical, so let's focus on some stuff I did like. Spider-Man, for example. Tom Holland actually does a pretty great job in the role of this newcomer to the MCU. I expect he's going to be very divisive amongst the fan base, as he and Aunt May are both a lot younger in this movie than they are usually depicted, but I had a lot of fun watching the dude just bounce organically off the other actors. I mean, if I'm totally honest, he's sort of another example of the fat I was talking about trimming before, since if you remove him entirely from the movie, the story doesn't change, and he is kind of quickly shoehorned in with Tony basically going, "Yeah mate, you're Spider-Man, ye?" Then Spider-Man's geet, Nah, I'm not like. Then Tony's all, "I are." Only for Spider-Man to be all like, "Ah, you got us." The audience is left to just assume that Iron Man knows who Spider-Man is because he played Sherlock Holmes that one time. I don't know, it didn't really make sense and was kind of just some needless fat to put in the trailer and set up future products, but at least it was fun to watch fat rather than the multiple Winter Soldier stuff. The big action sequences delivered on almost all fronts though. The first couple in the opening used a surprising amount of shaky cam, which I didn't like, but everything afterwards was nicely constructed, fun to watch and full of imagination. Especially the heavily advertised climactic battle in the airport, which is exactly the kind of fun superhero fisticuffs you've come to expect from this kind of flick. The characters this time around were really well handled too. Everybody has grounded reasoning and logic for their actions and feels like the natural next evolution of their personalities from previous movies. Tony in particular shined in this aspect, with Robert Downey Jr. playing an Iron Man who's been shaped by his surrounding situation into a character with greater empathy and sadness than we've seen him portray before, but at the same time never losing the qualities that make him Iron Man. The relationships overall are the real highlight. The more I think about it, after the film starts to distance itself from political commentary, it should fall apart at the seams, but even with the extended lengthy runtime and poor villain, it still holds its own ground on the strength of its people, as you watch them come together, fight, fall apart, and form friendships. There's just something worth celebrating about how organic and grounded all of the interactions feel between them, and overall, in spite of a few major flaws, this, at the end of it, still made me come out with a smile on my face. So yeah, it's worth going to. It's bloated, messy at times, a little convoluted, but it's still a sack of fun. And if nothing else, as someone with an American girlfriend, it was worth the price of the ticket just to hear Martin Freeman's attempt at an American accent. It's fucking dreadful. P.S. Captain America and Bucky should just fuck already.